Okay, good morning. Hope you guys have the agenda in front of you. One thing I want to start with before I forget to tell you this is we have some good news from the state 4-H office regarding enrollment period. So we've had several requests from across the state to move the start date for enrollment to August 1 so that counties could do sign-up nights in August when school starts. That will begin on August 1, 2019. So the system will shut down this year on July 15th and be closed from July 15th through August the 1st until we open enrollment again on August the 1st. However, this does not change when 4-H age is going to be determined. That's still going to be September 1 because we can set that parameter in the system so that we can not have to change all of our documents as far as our 4-H age is concerned. Carla was able to confirm that with 4-H Online that we can open on one date but set the date for determining age at another time. So hopefully that will help many of you who have been wanting to do a sign-up night in August and haven't been able to do so. If you're going to check out the computer lab, you probably ought to do it early because I have a strong feeling when this hits the wavelength, there'll be quite a few counties in our district that will want to reserve that computer lab in August to facilitate that enrollment night in their county. So definitely make those arrangements. You are the first to know in our district. So any questions about that? Do you like that news? Yes, okay, good. I knew I had lots of comments from my district, so I was really pushing that in the staff meetings on your behalf, and so were the other district program specialists. So hopefully that'll be a good move. Okay, I could not remember if we had talked about this topic yet or not, and since Ruth is on here, hopefully she'll be able to give some input because I know she's done some Zoom training for volunteers online. So Ruth, do you mind starting us off with that particular topic and telling us what you've been doing?
Yeah, so my volunteers had kind of requested an alternate way of volunteer training because we are a very spread out county. And so I decided to do at least 2 trainings per year on Zoom. And they like it. I had a few that kind of had to come in and learn how to use it first. But as soon as they figured out how to use it and how to connect to it, they loved it. And we still do a lot of hands-on training, but for things like how to do a record book, I kind of compiled an example and then did an online Zoom and then actually showed them and could share the screen and show them how to edit it on my computer, and they didn't have to come into Norman.
So the other advantage to this is now that I have a pro account, I can set up a Zoom room for you and make you a co-presenter so that you can record those types of things. So if you decide to do a Zoom training and it's something that you feel that volunteers might go back to and watch it another time, then we can certainly set it up. I can set you up a Zoom link and help you get that recorded so that we can post that on your internet. I mean, what am I trying to say? I guess you have to post it as a YouTube video, but then you can link that to your county website. We could even possibly link it to the district website. So that could be a resource for volunteers to be able to watch and get a volunteer training in as well. So as y'all think about trying to use technology, what are topics you think you could facilitate via a Zoom training? Ruth mentioned record books. Anybody out there doing volunteer training?
You could kind of do the on track that way. You could do like a beginning on track and then have them take it back and meet with their club officers to plan it.
That's a good idea. Becky, can I call on you to share the strategy you've moved to with your volunteer trainings, with having more than one time, a noon and a...
Yeah, well, we meet quarterly for our volunteer leadership team meetings, but I pretty much do training that night too. I mean, everyone's invited to that, but a lot of times it's mostly our club leaders that do that. But I do offer a noon meeting and a 5 o'clock meeting. So, but I've been having about half and half come to meetings. The ones that can get away, they like coming at noon, or if their kids have activities in the evening, they like it because they come at noon, and then so they're not missing their meetings. So I started offering it 2 times a day. It all happens in the same day, but it's been working pretty well.
So you have to just look at the makeup of your club leaders or your volunteers in general, and poll them and see if there's a better time of the day that they would prefer to meet, because a lunch Zoom meeting might be just as effective as a face-to-face meeting. They could sit at their desk and eat lunch and participate, and you could do the same thing, and it saves them time on the road. It saves you from having to host face-to-face. I mean, it's just a good thought, something to give some consideration and thought, and get some feedback from your volunteers. Ask them if they would be willing. I know that in some areas of the state, and I know Elizabeth may have this challenge, is there may not be good internet for them to be able to connect from home. So it may not be an option in some areas of the state where there's internet desert, for lack of better terms. But it's worth a discussion to ask and get feedback from your volunteers. And there's only going to be fewer of us. By the way, did you know that Dee Cooper is retiring? Anybody else see that email that went to the West Region?
No, but gossip travels fast.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so anything else on Zoom volunteer training?
So this isn't volunteer training, but I also just did my PAC on Zoom. And I actually got different people this time that I didn't get last time, because they had a lot more flexibility to do it from their office instead of coming to my office. And they seem to like it. So
what were some of the people that you got to participate that hadn't before that were different?
We've got a place called LoveWorks, and they do middle school leadership programming. And so he was able to go. 2 of the libraries had representatives on, and then one of the principals from the schools.
That's a great strategy. Very good. Okay. We just keep talking about enrollment, getting youth and volunteers approved in enrollment. Anybody still have stragglers out there that won't do the verified volunteer?
I have a few.
Okay.
I just have it like 2 in Hughes County for sure at the list. Like check them off whenever they get it done. But
it's a struggle, and Claude and I visited about this with what do we do? I mean, I don't think it's going to make an impact until we actually follow through with what we say we're going to do. In that, if they don't do all the steps to maintain volunteer certification or even be approved as a volunteer, we need to delete them or archive them and not allow them to serve in a volunteer role. And the same with 4-H or for membership with youth, that, we, first of all, we have to make sure that we've done our due diligence to provide written notification that enrollment has to be completed within 30 days, that if they don't pay and or fill out the scholarship form to request help with payment within that 30 days or whatever, that they're going to be archived. I mean, I know that we've encouraged you to make sure you're sending a physical letter, not just a verbal notification or an email, so that you have that documentation in case it comes, they come back and try to argue with you, that, you've done your due diligence and we can stand behind you on that. So that's my best advice, is just make sure you have the documentation to back yourself up if because I'm going to say it over and over. This is the process. This is what you need to be doing. Your records need to be clean with only active members by now. I mean, quite frankly, unless you had somebody that came in within the last couple of weeks and enrolled for the first time, there shouldn't be any pending enrollments anymore. I mean, we're already halfway through the year, over halfway. So if you continue to have issues with that, just call me, and we'll talk through it. Hi, Jared. Y'all have any questions about that? Jared, we're just talking about getting enrollment approved for youth and volunteers, and the struggle that it can be, and that it's something educators have to stay on top of. And at this point, we shouldn't have any pending volunteers or members, because we're over halfway through the year. Jared doesn't have a microphone. Okay. Group enrollment, how's it going? Anybody using that checklist that I attached? No, Becky does. So I know we're just kind of ramping up, really, in a lot of cases, school enrichment with Chick Embryo and a lot of school programming, as especially once we get through testing the end of April, they'll really be calling on Extension to come in and do programming. So do your very best to stay on top of entering group enrollment on a monthly basis, just like you should be doing reports, so that you don't get behind and get to July 15th and not have anything entered. Because the goal is that by the time the system closes down, you would have everything complete and you wouldn't have to go back and do anything after August 1. So if you're not sure how to enter something specifically with group enrollment, please call me and ask questions, and let's work through it, because I want you to have accurate data in there in your group enrollment. So where else should you be putting that information for group enrollment? Alex, can you answer that question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I put it in my event summary and my PARs and all that fun narratives and stuff.
Right. Absolutely. Very good. Anybody doing evaluation with group enroll or with school enrichment or any of your groups? What are you doing? Alex shook her head.
I've got Tammy does most of my school enrichment stuff, and so she's going to do Chick Embryo this year, and then I know when she plans the new water fair that we just learned about, we're going to do that evaluation as well, and I think she does one for Farm to You, I want to say. So, and then we did one for Yoga for Kids when we had our Healthy Living grant. So,
Casey, did you get certified for yoga?
Yes, I did last week.
Good. Excellent. Anybody else? I know Liz wasn't able to go.
Yeah, I went. Christina and I both went.
Oh, good. I think you guys will really like that program and have a good time with it. Danielle, I don't know if y'all are friends with Danielle Venable on Facebook, but there's a little girl at one of the schools that she's been doing yoga at. I think a teacher shared this with her. The little girl, I don't know, she got hurt somehow, and one of her friends ran up to her on the playground and said, just do your yoga breathing, just do your yoga breathing. And she started doing that, and all the kids gathered around her, and they were doing the yoga breathing with her, and really helped to calm her down and help her to, stop crying and focus on the breathing instead of the pain. And she had posted that on Facebook, and I went, that goes in your narrative and the evaluation, outcome impact statement section. Make sure you put that in there. And that, something as simple as a teacher telling you something that, the kids, really applied what they were learning. That's a significant highlight, that you should be putting in that particular, I don't even know the number, but there's the one related evaluation where you list outcomes, impacts from the evaluation. That should go there. So anyway, I just thought that was a really cool example to share, that it doesn't always have to be paper evaluation in what you record in your narratives. So, okay. Entering training on your volunteer records. How many of you are when you finish volunteer training, you have your sign-in sheet, you're taking that and entering that training on those volunteers' records? See a few heads nodding. Okay.
Yeah.
I can tell you the state office sometimes gets requests from administration on tracking our volunteers doing what they're required to do. That's been conversation at the state 4-H office with at our staff meetings. They're also asking for things like, give me a current number of, how many people are we reaching in group enrollment? What's our current enrollment? How many do we have pending? They're asking those questions. So the better records you can keep and keeping those up to date, the better off your county is, because at any point in time, the information in 4-H Online is real time. And so it's important to stay on top of that, whether that's you entering that information or you making sure your secretary knows how to take that sign-in sheet and get that information entered. It's important. So do your best to keep up with that. And if you're unsure how to add training to a volunteer record, it's just a really simple, quick process. What was that? Oh, Jared's pointing.
Sorry, it's me.
So just call me if you need help with how to enter the training on your volunteer records. Don't forget about your team leaders too that are certified volunteers. They need to be having the same amount of training as your volunteers do. So if you're doing training with your teens at a different time than what you do with your volunteers, you have a team leader meeting, you have a county council meeting, but you do training along with that. Those types of things can count as training for those team leaders that are certified volunteers. So make sure that you're entering their training as well. Okay. Several of you have been through 8 Essential Elements recently. I guess that was in February. And I'm just curious to get some feedback from you on what are your thoughts? Have you been able to implement any of those lessons with any of your volunteer training, or have plans to use that material for volunteer training in the future? I know Alex has been through it a while back, and Becky too. So if you're using those
Can you hear me, Cheryl?
Yeah, Jared, go ahead.
Okay. I have a volunteer meeting here coming up in a few weeks which I've been through it, already before. So that's my plans.
Do you know what lesson you're going to teach or topics?
That I'm still kind of up in the air, to be honest with you. Matter of fact, that was kind of because I've been got all my level 2 stuff out of the way because I've been working on it, and so now I'm kind of focusing on that stuff now, and so. But no, I don't have exactly what I'm going to do quite yet.
Yeah.
What exactly?
Very good. There's a lot of great activities that can be hands-on. It can be tied to a specific project area if you wanted to do tie in specific project information. So don't forget about that resource in addition to the core materials. I know that the new ones have also just been through the core training, volunteer training as well. And just remember too, especially with the core training, you don't have to use the PowerPoints exactly as they are. You don't even have to use the PowerPoints. If you want to come up with a creative way to share that same information, feel free to adapt that and use that in a way that works for you. Becky can probably give us some really good examples of how she probably adapts some of those materials. And I'm not familiar with how she's used it in the past, but I know she's very creative. So, Becky, if you have some suggestions, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, I probably not one time over the year have just taught that. It's always incorporated into whatever subject matter that I'm using. And it's not going to be everything, but you take bits and pieces of it and you incorporate it into what you're doing. I've never taught that just by itself ever, because that's kind of boring. So I've always just tried to work it in with whatever subject matter I was working with. Whatever, it didn't matter if it was food science, or I think I did meat science one time. I mean, it can go with any project, breads, whatever you're talking about.
Yeah, one thing that comes to my mind, like I know that there, like in 8 Essential Elements, there's a lesson on ages and stages, and learning about the age-appropriate activities. And so you could even tie that to the child care project. If you did specific training on child care, why is it important to know for kids that do child care to know ages and stages? Well, they need to know that information so that they can pick activities for the kids they might be babysitting that are age appropriate.
Yeah, we just had camp counselor training last Friday night into Saturday morning, and that's a big part of our training is how do we incorporate all of those things into everything that we're talking about, even to the safety speech, right, Katie? we talk about we incorporate all those things into our training, so it's fun, and we have a new code word, marshmallow. Katie knows what that's about, but
is that like if there's an issue, they say marshmallow?
Yeah, it was actually I used it for the safety training. That was one of my sections, and those marshmallows were our precious campers. And we did a relay race, and they had to carry those campers with chopsticks down to another table, and they had to make sure they took care of that precious camper all the way down. And then they had to answer safety questions when they got to the end. And by the time we were done, we got some of our precious campers had holes poked in them and bushes in them. The whole point was, that safety, that's a concern at all times. So, you have to take care of, and those were our precious campers that we did.
I don't know if Elizabeth was there yet. When we were at Special Clovers Camp last weekend, the weekend before last, gosh, time flies. The weather was not the greatest. And so we had never done this before at Special Clovers Camp. I mean, we always kind of had it in the back of our mind, but there wasn't bad weather, so we didn't really worry about it with regard to training the Clover Buddies with it. But Marty, Mr. Weatherman, Marty Montague, he was keeping a track on the weather, and he and the nurse that was there at the time and Kathy walked through the building, did an evaluation of our facilities, fire extinguishers, where were they, where did the windows open and not open, what are the exits for the building, where would we go if there was a fire to gather up, Where would we go if there's a tornado or bad weather? And so after they scoped it all out and made a plan, then they came back and we did some training with the Clover Buddies, and we took them in to the dining or the sanctuary room where we kind of use kind of as a rec room, just a big open carpeted room. And he said, had us all close our eyes, and he said, okay, where's the fire extinguisher in this room? I had no idea where it was. And then he said, do the windows on that whole wall of windows, do those windows open? I had no idea. And so, just thinking about those kinds of things when you go to camp, and this leads right into the next statement, and is camp planning, that's important. That's just as important as ages and stages as safety, like Becky was saying, and making sure that we know the protocol for those kinds of things. Then we went downstairs to the area where we would go if there was bad weather. We talked about exits in the building and where they would gather if there was a fire. So we wrote that on the list for next year's training to make sure that we schedule safety training into the camp, the Clover Buddy training on Friday and Saturday, regardless of what the weather is. That's an important part that we need to make sure we're covering. So let's go ahead and move into county camp planning. So as you think about county camp, what are some things that you need to keep in mind as you work with, some of you work in groups of counties to plan camp? What are you working on right now? What are you addressing with your camp planning?
Well, I guess for McCurtain County, which we are with LaFleur and Latimer, is who we camp with there at Beavers Bend. But I met with my county officers last night, and then we're going to meet with educators here in a few weeks there at Beavers Bend. But our deal is kind of, like anything, what's our theme, what's our plans, workshops, things like that. And so I know with my county officers, they like the more, if possible, hands-on workshop type stuff, or a lot of times I'll pull in the Department of Wildlife. They'll come in and do some stuff. I have some ladies from the Kaimachi Technology Center coming in and doing kind of a leadership type deal, workshop. So just kind of all different ideas, and then we'll have a guest speaker come in one night, as well, and kind of do a motivational, speech or workshop or something like that with them.
How do you go about selecting a theme?
On the themes, we kind of, our county officers kind of try to, I let them kind of decide what do they think, might fit, because it has to fit with, of course, our ages of our campers. And then, but then we have, we have 6 groups is what we have for our camp. So I got to find 6 names, as well for our small groups and stuff, Cheryl. So, but themes, they kind of throw different things out there. It's been from, and it depends on, of course, we've got to have our t-shirt and our theme on our t-shirt. So it's whatever we come up with. And then, as you guys know, Tony Johnson's famous for certain things, so sometimes he's pretty good at help throwing some ideas out there as well for themes. So it's kind of, do we have one yet? Of course not, and so we kind of, and then we'd look into what the state officers are doing, or kind of what the theme is for the state maybe, and not use it, so to say, but maybe use some ideas from it, as well.
What about others?
Well, we have 3 counties in our camping group. It's me and Katie and Jerry. But what we do is we each we rotate. So this year, Carter County picked a theme. They're in charge of the T-shirt, and then the rest of us just go with the flow. Because guess what? The next year it's going to be one of our turns. So next year it's Pontotoc County's turn. So each year we just work with whoever's turn it is. We work with our team leaders. They get to pick the theme, and then when we meet, we met last weekend we talk about the theme, and then we start all branching out from them. But ours is pretty well split up into thirds. We each have our responsibilities and certain number of workshops that each county's responsible for. We also have committees. Our counselors are on committees, and basically it's each county educator works with that committee. We've done it a million different ways. We found the easiest that all of our kids are on our committee instead of trying to cross county lines, because sometimes they're really good about talking to each other. Other times, the minute you get to camp, you can tell that they've not even spoke to each other at all. So we work on committees like my committee is what is my committee? Opening assemblies and recognition and free time activities. Katie has, what do you have, morning and evening activities? Yeah. And then like Carter County does, they're in charge of all the ceremonies and that kind of thing. So we pretty much divide and conquer pretty much. And we try to equally give everybody the same amount of workshops and everything to be responsible for.
Yeah, so, and that just leads into when you use committees like Becky's talked about, that helps those kids with leadership roles for their record book at a district. I mean, you could essentially list that as district because it's a multi-county event. I mean, might be stretching it a little, but in my mind, I would think that would be okay. So, and it's up to y'all if you feel like it's better suited as a county committee, that'd be fine. But if multiple counties are working together on an event, it could be a district level event. So anyway, don't forget about that in providing that opportunity for those kids to serve not only as a camp counselor. Yes, that's a leadership role too, but an additional leadership role would be a committee member or a committee chair for that. One of the things that keeps coming to my mind that I've heard Carla say a million times is planning with purpose. And just picking a theme for camp isn't all that needs to be considered when you think about planning with purpose. So if you pick a theme and it's Call of the Wild, I'm just going to make something up, and you're going to focus on wildlife, then and all of your sessions kind of center around wildlife in some shape, form, or fashion, then you could probably do an evaluation that's focused more than just customer satisfaction. You could focus evaluation on actual content of what they're learning, not just customer satisfaction. So that's one thing I would challenge you to look at the wide array of materials that are out there that already have evaluation created for them. The water fair, I know several counties have done a focus on water education, and they've used the water fair evaluation. If you did healthy living types of things, you could use the health common measures evaluation. If you focused on science or STEM, you could use that evaluation. So just think about more than just, okay, let's pick a theme because it's fun, but how can we tie content to that theme and make, hopefully, get an opportunity to do some quality evaluation beyond just customer satisfaction. We like the food, we didn't like the food. We like the facility, we didn't, those kinds of things. So that's an important thing. So what are other things that you have to plan on with county camp besides your theme, programming, those kinds of things? I guess the first thing I'd like for y'all to talk about is what content are you covering in your camp counselor training? And how much time are you spending in training those kids to fulfill that role? Elizabeth hadn't been to camp. So Katie, will you talk about that for y'all's group? No. While Katie is trying to get her microphone to work, Alex, will you talk about what y'all have done for your multi-county camp?
Yeah, so this year we actually added 2 new counties and to our camp. So we've been trying to work with them and everything. It's Marshall and Murray County. And so I know this year, since Ruth and I are kind of close to each other county-wise, I know we're going to do a training for our camp counselors in May. And it's going to be about 3 hours long. And we haven't officially planned it out yet. I was kind of going to do something like I did last year. I actually have the book that Kevin Allen gave us, and he gave us a bunch of activities and things to do with the kids. We talked about scenarios a lot, and I had them kind of role play it out. And like, what if a kid came up to you and said they wet the bed, or you know that a kid sleepwalks at night? What do you do to prepare for that kind of thing? So we went over a lot of that kind of stuff, and trying to think what else we did. And then the day before our campers come to camp is all about teen training. We have the teens come a day early to camp. So last year, and I think we're going to do it again this year, we're going to do Title IX and Title VII and working with minors. So we know that everyone has it done when camp starts. And I know that I think Sarah and Ruth have got some stuff that we're going to do for that first day of camp. I think we're going to do a mystery dinner with all the teens and kind of mingle and get to know each other and everything like that. So that's kind of what we do for training.
Casey, are you camping with them too? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, we've got Seminole, Hughes, Cleveland, McLean, Marshall, and Murray. So there's 6 of us going together.
Where do y'all go?
We're going to go to Camp Goddard in Sulphur.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Becky, you might have to talk since Katie's having trouble with her microphone.
Well, I actually just emailed you our agenda that we use for camp training to share if you want to. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
But ours actually started several years ago. I actually got a grant because the counties that I camped with could have cared less about counselor training, and I knew how important it was. And I've been to Arkansas and trained with their camp counselors when I visited their program, and I just saw how beneficial it was. Not only just for the camp, but it's beneficial to them. Any teen leader responsibility that they have, they grow from that. And so we put together a pretty comprehensive program. But we train. We start at 7 o'clock in the evening, and we train till almost, I don't know. We get faster every year, but 1:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning, and then we all go to sleep and we get up the next morning and come home. But we found though that this time between when we've had this training in camp, it gives us time to work with our counselors some more, help them get more prepared to be at camp. They're a lot more relaxed when we get there because they're like, we've already talked about all this stuff. Let's get on with the job that we came to do. So I like it for that reason, because I just feel like they're more relaxed and more prepared when it's time to train. But our agenda, we split that up too, so we all have a part. But I've used a lot of training materials from Kansas, from Arkansas. I was looking for some new stuff this year, and I actually, when I was working on the safety talk, and I actually pulled up California's camp counselor stuff, and they even have a policy on using hot glue guns, which I was like, cool, for safety, but how you should properly handle those. But anyway, it's one of my favorite things to get to do is camp counselor training. So it's actually more fun for me to do that than to be at camp with no sleep. But I think it's very beneficial to the rest of your program if you'll take the time to invest in it.
Yeah, camp counselor training, it can't be a 2-hour training and expect that those kids can take on all that responsibility that we're expecting them to do. And so I I really like the model that the Tri-County Pot and Pottawatomie, Pontotoc and Carter County use with the lock-in, because they can cover a lot of content. It builds rapport with those kids and teamwork and all those things, and it really is effective to do that training that early, because then you can follow up with emails and other information and committee work up until time for camp, to keep those kids engaged, as opposed to just doing it right before the campers arrive. Sometimes that's our only option to do it, but it sure is something to consider as you all continue to fine tune, and maybe Elizabeth will get plugged in with a county camp eventually, if she wants to. Maybe her mentor won't deter her from county camping. But the other things that I want to make sure that everybody is on point about with regard to camping is, you need to make sure that you're doing the activity insurance. The $1 a year, it won't cut it. This is a special activity that needs that 30 cents a day coverage. So make sure you're building that into the cost of your event, so that you can cover that expense. Make sure that you have a crisis management plan filled out, and that you know who to call, when to call, those kinds of things, that you've scoped out safety issues with regard to weather. I know a few years ago, when not long after I came, maybe the first year or two, there was a tornado out by where Pontotoc and Carter County were camping, and at Wynette. Is that where it is? Wynette? Did I say that
Yes.
right? And they had to take kids to the school. You want to expand on that, Becky?
Yeah, it's just really, especially we go the last week in May, so we're still in tornado season. We go to camp kind of right in the middle of the state where it usually tries to go right through. But we knew that there was a chance of weather. But the very first day when we first got there, we took inventory of every vehicle that was at camp. We knew exactly how many kids would fit in every vehicle. We knew exactly what we were going to do if that were to happen. And guess what? It happened. And so Wynette School is close to us. They have a basement. So, and now Katie takes care of that contact of who we need to contact if we do think that we need to bug out and go. And made sure all the counselors knew exactly when we said, okay, we got to do this. They knew exactly what to do. They knew to bring all their kids to the mess hall, have them sit down, keep them entertained. Who was to get the first aid kit and put it in the vehicle. I'll never forget Olivia Hamilton's face when I said, okay, we got to go. And her face was, but she's very calm, but I just remember the look on her face when she was like, we really are doing this? It's like, yeah, we are. But we knew exactly, we knew we could get every kid transported over there to the school. Now that did include some of our counselors that did drive to camp. We had long discussions about all that, about, do we let them, do we don't let them? But in that situation, we decided that us being where we needed to be outweighed the risk of, we basically just put them in the convoy. They were stuck in the middle between all of us. So we knew where they were and all that kind of stuff. But so, pretty much we try to do that every year now, because you just never know what might happen. So.
Yeah, so it's really important to have that conversation with the camp manager or whatever facility that you're at. Is what is their emergency plan that they have for their camp? Where do they have people go? Because that can help facilitate you filling out your crisis management plan and having that in place. If they have a safe room or a designated place for tornado shelter in place. If they have a place, if there's a fire where people gather, that would be helpful for you to have that conversation with that camp manager ahead of time to be able to fill that crisis management plan. I would suggest a notebook with your crisis management plan, some insurance forms, a copy of your insurance policy, your health forms. All of those things could be in one spot, so that you could just grab it and go in the event of an emergency. Those health forms would be a great, or a list of all your campers listed in the front of that notebook. That's your checklist to make sure everybody's accounted for. So, just think about, you got to think about all the different aspects and making sure that your all the staff, all the adults, and all the camp counselors know the protocol.
Yeah, where we keep our first aid kit, every county puts all their medical forms. We all keep them right there in the same spot so that all of us can get to any of them at any time. But also when we bugged out for the tornado, we had all that we had medication and so I have a box that's a medication box, and it all goes in there, and it went with us too. So everything was right there, and we could just grab it and take it all with us if we have to go.
Any of y'all have a nurse that you hire, or that maybe you have a volunteer that's a nurse that is with you at camp?
It's nice if you can find one.
Yes,
I have a couple of volunteers that are nurses that I make sure I bring.
That's very good. I mean, they can handle that medication dispensary so that campers don't have that in their dorm room. We actually, for Special Clovers Camp, we had been, the first 2 years, we just had one nurse, and this year we had a Clover buddy whose mother was a nurse, and she wanted to come and volunteer as well. And quite frankly, we won't go back to less than 2 nurses now, because it was so nice. We had one nurse on the first floor and one nurse on the second floor in the lodging area. One of them took care of medication for the Clover Buddies, and one of them took care of medication for the campers. And they were fabulous. And it's so nice to have that extra security and cushion, especially with that particular audience. You need all the hands you can get on deck to manage that particular program. So lots and lots of things to think through. But if you are looking for ideas for camp counselor training, of course you can talk to Becky. I'll be happy to help you brainstorm, come up with ideas. Kevin Allen is a great resource too, simply because he's done a lot of camping. But don't hesitate to ask if you need some help with camp counselor training. Okay, is there any other topics that anybody would like to add to the discussion today? We're about 48 minutes in. We're going to try to keep you at an hour. We have May 15th is our next quarterly training. I need to get on the ball and get a location. That's one of those that we were going to try to do 3 different sites and connect via Zoom for content training, and then do activities locally. Probably we'll meet in McAllister if the meeting room's available. I can't remember if I booked it or not. So I'll circle back around, and I need to visit with Nancy and find out if we're still going to do it that way, since we don't have a 3rd district specialist yet. So we may end up just coming all together in one location. But anyway, just make sure you have that on your calendar, those of you who are new.
What was the date again, Cheryl?
I think it's May 15th.
Okay.
Let me double check that. Yeah, May 15th. Please share topics that you're struggling with or have questions about that we can put on this discussion group for the next time. I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, we went ahead and scheduled one for May, even though we have a training that month. We went ahead and scheduled one for May the 1st. So that's our next discussion group meeting. Any questions about 4-H Day at the Capitol? Those of you that have never been before. Do you have everybody get your kids through the training? I don't remember who was on the list.
I did. I'm just having that. I'm going to be in Boston, and Barbara's taking the girls, but I'm trying to figure out a volunteer can get them to the city, because Barbara said she's going to the city the day before. or she has an in-service something the day before, so it's kind of silly for her to come back. So I'm trying to logistically like figure all that out, which is kind of hard because I'm not even going to be here.
Yeah. Is there not a county? Is Marty not taking anybody?
I think he's taking one person, so I probably need to have that conversation with him and see if they could ride with him. I just need to figure out if the leader's going to go.
Yeah, that'd be probably your best bet, and then free up a parent from having to take them.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't think about that till you said that. But yeah, I'll check with him today.
Just make sure if you're going, wear comfortable shoes because it's a lot of walking and probably a little more than normal since we're meeting a couple of blocks further away from the Capitol for the opening session in the Wildlife Building. The tunnel is closed, so we're parking in a different area. I don't know if Kathleen sent all that information out yet, but I'm kind of distracted. I haven't really worried about where I stay at the Capitol yet. When it gets to be the 15th, I'll worry about it, where I'm supposed to park. Okay. Anything else? Send me topic ideas for next month. Thank y'all for participating. Have a great day. Happy Hump Day.
Thank you, Cheryl.